Happy Saturday, everybody. It is a beautiful early spring day on the Slavic Farm here. Today's going to be a very special episode as I'm surrounded by ducks and geese here. Today we're going to talk about what it is to live a restoration lifestyle. And there's going to be some geese that fly right over us here. You can hear them. Look at this. So awesome. All right, so this is the Ask a Painter live show. I am Nick Slavic. I am the host of Ask a Painter Live. It's a show where I use my over 2.5 decades, I'm in my 29th year of practicing the trade, to answer any questions about owning a business or the craft. And today we have been, for the last bunch of weeks, I really wanted to get a bunch of special things out. Templates, numbers, job costing, budgets. We went hard with analytics, data, things like that. Today, it's time to remind us sometimes of why we do what we do. So today is a show all about living a restoration lifestyle. And it's not just taking something old and making it new. It is, if you have that restoration gene, that restoration motor in you, you do this to everything in your life. Very helpful in a lot of things. Running a paint business, helping clients out with restoring their homes. Sometimes very harmful when you apply that restoration gene to your family and the constant improvement gene to your family as well. So I'm going to talk today a little about the driving force between almost everything I do. And what I like is some people take a small 200-year-old metal army figure like this and restore it. To me, that's awesome to see and it's satisfying. I want to do things on a little bit larger scale. I tend to gravitate towards historic homes, land, business, clients' homes, things like that. So today, I'm going to walk you through the Slavic Farm, kind of show you how that restoration gene gets into everything around you. I'm also going to talk about my old historic home in town that my wife and I lived in for 15 years. And then I'm going to show you something that I've not shown anybody before, which is our family's 1880s farmhouse on this property. And we're going to go through a tour through that. So my wife and I, we bought a 1917 Craftsman home, beautiful bones, perfect shape, just needed aesthetic updates in town. We lived there for 15 years. Nearly everything important in our lives happened there. I got out of the Army, we bought that house, went to college, we got married, we had all our kids, we started businesses together, and in that 15 years, by the time I had bought that 1917 Craftsman home, I had probably been practicing, this trade for 15 years, give or take. I grew up with my father restoring old farmhouses, working on these old historic buildings, and I truly, truly love them. And again, if you have that restorative gene, that restoration gene, you itch for this sort of thing. I can walk into a 200-year-old house and feel more at home than just about any of the new construction that we work on nowadays. And that's in you when you have that. 15 years I've been practicing the trade. I bought my old historic home, and there were a few unanswered questions for me about what it is to restore homes, really get in there. Some things that my clients did not give me the opportunity to do. So over the course of 15 years, I got into that house, inside and out. I got the guts. I put my hands in that house, and we restored that thing, my wife and I, by hand in 15 years. And that was my treatise. That was my sort of it was the sum of all of my experience, all of my knowledge, actually put into practical use to restore a home, not only to honor its past, but to modernize it for a family too. Because again, I don't want to use oil lamps in a house. I like electricity, but can we do it tastefully where you don't completely ruin the spirit of this house and that spirit that gives me so much energy of these things? So today, we're on the Slavic Farm. This is the Slavic house. Now, when I built this thing, basically a year ago, this is the anniversary of it, the world was shutting down from COVID, and a lot of people had a lot of time to watch me build this house myself. And a lot of the comments were, hey Nick, that doesn't really feel like a house that you would live in. And you're probably right. But we want to get on this property. This is a 20-acre piece of land just outside of my hometown, New Prague. It's in a tiny little German town called St. Benedict out here. Some of the best neighbors, best people you ever meet out here. This is a 20-acre piece of land that is not necessarily economically viable. It's not 20 acres of flat cropland. It has prairie, which is has a food plot right here. It has marsh, wetland, pond, creek, woods, and a little oak savanna in the back. It was important to me to get my kids out and live a lifestyle that I sort of got to live as a kid. I grew up in town as a kid, but I spent a lot of my time out and about at the outskirts of town. My parents were outdoorsy people. We did a lot of stuff outside. We could have waited another 5 years and built a big old farmhouse, something that looked old and things like that. But my kids are between 6 and 12 right now. And if I waited another 5 years, one of my kids would almost be out of high school. And I'm not willing to let them go without a lifestyle that I want them to live, which is restorative, which is outside, which is doing things, interacting with nature. So my wife and I just put our hands in and we said, you know what, we're going to build the most economical house that we possibly can. Obviously, give it the Slavic twist a little bit, but we wanted to get the kids out here. So the Slavic Farm, 20 acres, wilderness preserve. We have this building right here. When we sold our house in town and built this thing, we actually have less of a mortgage payment out here than we did in town because we built a very, very economical house. Now, the twist is, the thing that pacified me in that restorative gene is that there's a town called Vesley where my wife and I were married years ago, 15 years ago, and they were tearing down the historic schoolhouse right next to the church. We actually restored the church, and because we did a good job there, the parishioners had given us the opportunity to salvage things out of that house. Or that schoolhouse. So they gave us a couple days. We loaded up all the Slavic vans and we got pry bars and everything else, and we took trim, doors, cabinet, millwork, everything we could out of that house. We salvaged it. I stripped it all down and I put it in that house. So what you'll see in the Slavic house is this wonderful like 10-inch baseboards, super ornate, historic doors. You see the picture I posted about the preview here. Those are salvaged doors from a 100-year-old schoolhouse that we put back into this house. So not only is this house economical, it is really cool as well. The war room is actually located on the other side of this thing too. So let's go through and let's talk about the Slavic Farm until we get to the old farmhouse here. So good morning, everybody. So we actually have a restoration plan in place for this farm. The restoration gene is something that you have or you don't. I need not to like, I don't want to force my will on houses and land. I want to do things to maximize their utilitarianism and their aesthetics and their beauty. That was just a pheasant crowing over there. That is cool. So on a piece of land like this, you could do nothing, right? You could just let it be. But in typical fashion here, we are going through a native prairie restoration project here. This is about 3 acres, you can see from the road. All of this prairie through the Slavic house and into the marsh back there. It's about 3 acres where we are going to be planting beautiful native prairie, native grasses, native flowers. And when this thing, somewhere between 2 and 5 years from now, this thing will be beautiful. Some of the best animal habitat you will ever get. Wildflowers for bees, pollinators, grass habitat for all the little birds and rabbits and mice and things like that. And when you look out the windows of the Slavic house, you're going to see prairie and flowers, and it's going to be beautiful. Now, other side here, this is a piece of land that we still till up. Undetermined yet what the final use is going to be, but what we're doing here, last year we planted grasses, soybeans, turnips, radishes, kale, grass, and we let it be as a sort of habitat. More geese up there. And we leave it here all winter. We do not till it at the end of the year because I want critters to live in here. Animals will actually dig up the turnips and eat them all year round. We are probably going to keep this as a food plot for now, but we have a land management plan in place where we're actually going to plant hundreds and hundreds of trees and bushes around the property to create more habitat. That was a pheasant again too. That is awesome. If you guys have watched videos from last year, we actually stock pheasants out here with the help of my paint rep, Wes Melgren. He's got pheasants and we released 50 of them out here again. So we're walking down the driveway. You can see backside of the Slavic house. That's my war room there in the corner, so I get to stare at all this when we get to do that. The sandhill cranes have returned, the geese and ducks are back, and marsh. We have this beautiful marsh that runs all the way through the property, culminating in a pond out here. I'll take you back here a little bit. So yeah, living a restoration lifestyle. This applies to my business. This applies to the land, the houses. I can't stop this. I want to craft a thing around me that not only is beautiful, but useful. And this is the place that likely my family will live the rest of their lives, and my kids will have this after me. So the things that we do now, this land needs a lot of work, and I'm going to put that hard work in. The things that we do to this land now are going to be, probably change the way my family lives and thinks for the next 100 years. We have old apple trees right here. We have my beautiful old 69 Dodge Seamus green truck. This is the original farmstead here. I'll kind of show you a few of the outbuildings here that we're either trying to determine what to do with or restore. There's the 1880s old house here. That'll be our final destination today. A little bit. So we have old summer kitchens right there. We have an old utility building there, the original windmill still up. We have an old semi-trailer that was used for storage. You can see creek running through the property here. This is one of the things, we bought this originally from Craigslist, believe it or not. It was on a Sunday. And one of the first pictures on Craigslist was this babbling little brook right here that runs through the property. You can see it comes from the marsh and the wetlands back here. Oh, there's the geese over there standing on their little mound. That's awesome. But beautiful, beautiful crystal clear water running through here. One of the saddest things, if you're a true restorationist, is having a building that's beyond your restoration powers. Or if you took the time and the money to restore it, there wouldn't be enough of the original stuff left. This breaks my heart right here. See the ducks and the geese out there? This breaks my heart because a couple years before we bought this place, the barn fell down. Truly, truly breaks my heart. So we're actively trying to salvage what we can from this barn and put it to use and respect whatever guts and bones that this thing has. But, if anybody knows me, this is truly a heartbreaker. It's so we're just going to try to do the best we can with what we have and go from there. Now, the restoration gene. There's 2 to 2.5 acres of solid woods back here that no longer exists. Now, it's a little counterintuitive. You would say, why would you get rid of 2 acres of woods out behind here? Well, in the 1970s and 80s, there was this right here. Cows grazed back here. When cows sort of stopped grazing, or they grazed it in a different way, a whole bunch of scrub trees, not harmful trees, but just not useful trees called box elders grew up here. They're not bad, but they have a tendency to grow fast, die, and all fall over. So what we did was this winter, we actually took 2 acres of trees out, and we're going to go through a land management process where I left some ring trees around here to give us a nice little break and habitat for animals. But we are going to be planting prairie back here, and we're going to be planting a whole bunch of shrubs, bushes that have plants or nuts, berries, things like that for the animals. And it's going to be, oh, there's deer tracks right there. Look at this. Deer came right through here. That's so awesome. So yeah, this is our plan. And this is what 2 acres of trees, we have 2 piles. This is what 2 acres of trees piled up looks like, and I need to burn those this spring here to make way for the prairie planting. So all of this will be planted as prairie. We're going to be ringing it with trees and bushes, making little pods. I don't necessarily like straight lines of all the trees and stuff, so we're going to be making little habitats throughout here. And I'll take you down over here. You can see beautiful farmstead here. So why do I show you this? This translates exactly to what we've been talking about the last couple of months on Ask a Painter. This restorative gene that I have, this driving force of almost everything I do, I treat my business the same way. I like to take things that are in disrepair or things that need to be maximized for utility or beauty, and fix them, including my own business. So when we talk about job costing, when we talk about taking care of your employees, benefits, things like that, this is taking something that is not yet maximized and maximizing it. And it truly runs through every bit of my body. Otherwise, this would be a lot of work. You need a lot of patience for this. So here is, and I think you guys can understand why my family finds so much peace and enjoyment out here. Geese are telling me to go away. But this is our little pond back here. And then across there, we have a little oak savanna in the back, a little safe haven for the critters. We'll walk along the marsh here in the pond. And then I'll show you guys my 1880s farmhouse, which I've never shown before because it's a place that's very special to our family, and we don't really know, well, we didn't really know what to do with it at the time. And, oh, ducks as well. Yeah, this is good. So it's fun to see my 5-6-year-old daughter, my youngest, run around out here. It's been fun. There's a lot of times where, you know, we can't find her and we just yell for her and she comes running out of this back area here. Kids are free to roam. We lived on a corner lot in town, which is awesome. I love my old house, but we had to be more watchful of my kids in town than we did out here because of that corner lot with the cars buzzing by. Now, my kids just wander freely. And for a while I wondered, or I worried about having a creek in these old buildings, but kids are way smarter than we give them credit for. My kids have been running around here with BB guns for years. Nobody's ever got hurt yet, so we'll see. Oh, one more thing before we get to the farmhouse here. So many of the buildings here will have to be salvaged. That's the honest truth. I've dug through all of them. We've tried to make plans to make some good, but a lot of them have fatal flaws. And we kind of knew that getting into it, but we just want to honor the history of this property and just do our best by it. So you can see here, this is one of the things we love as a family. Our little babbling brook here. Kids play around out here. It's a very peaceful place on the Slavic Farm. Most of my, every time there's a big rain shower, what happens is we find a bunch of old pottery and pieces of metal and bottles and things like that. The water will actually come down here and wash away the dirt, and it will expose new kind of trinkets and things down here. So you'll see my kids down here a lot, just wading through looking for stuff. All right, so let's talk about this old farmhouse. So these old buildings truly just like give me shivers. I just love them. I've loved them since I was a kid. I was one of those weird kids who loved restoring antique furniture, loved old houses. I just couldn't get enough of it. That's my... Oh, snow geese. Man, it is a animal heavy morning here. Look at this. This is why we love it here. Oh, look at them. The Canada geese are coming to join them. Oh, that's cool. So, history of the old farmhouse here. Original wing was built in about the 1880s. Another wing, as far as we can tell, was added in the 1920s. This building right here, as far as we can tell, used to be separated from the house. For any of you old house nuts, you probably know the phrase summer kitchen. It was too hot in these houses to have, that wood burning or coal burning stove in the house. So they would build a building outside of the house called the summer kitchen. It was a separate building just for cooking. You can see the metal patch right there. That's where the old chimney used to come out of there. There was an old stove in here at one point too. Now, interestingly enough, when they attached this to the house to make it part of the house, they built a second summer kitchen. So you can see the chimney on this thing too. This used to be a separate building just for cooking in order to keep the house nice and cool in the summer. what I love about this house, the truly unique thing about this house is this original wood siding. This stuff was covered by 1970s mustard color steel siding, and somewhere along the way, probably the 70s, somebody covered it all up. I don't see many houses in this area of this era that have this good of siding on it. Now, the sad part is you can see those dark strips way at the top along the frieze board up there. They did remove some of the ornate detail in order to put the steel siding on, along with the caps here. The good part is there's one surviving cap, and this is what I love. And you can still see the lightning rods up there too. See the metal spires up there? That one doesn't have its ball, but that one does. There's glass balls on those things, so you would know if lightning hit them, it would hit that rod, explode the glass ball, and it would actually travel down a copper rope all the way down to the ground. I'll show you what I love digging for in old houses. So you can see in here, a little dilapidated, but we have an original crown from this house. So that was the original detail above all of these windows outside. That will be saved and preserved as a piece of history of this farm, but it will also inform our next house that we build. And when I say build, it's because this house powers not feasible to be restored. And that truly does break my heart. So my wife and I love this old stuff like this. So right now, what you see is we have a dumpster here, and we have a demo permit for this house. One thing you can do for old houses like this is donate them to the fire department, and they will come and they will burn it down for you. And that's fine, but I don't think the right thing to do for a house like this is to burn it down. So what you're seeing here is plaster and lath all removed, and we are going to systematically take this house down from the top down and salvage every bit of this old lumber. Why? That's a lot of work. We could push it over, we could burn it, we could put it in a dumpster. I can't do it. I can't do it. When you have stuff like this, original built-in from the 1920s wing, this feels like sacrilege to me to push into a dumpster or sell or whatever else. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna preserve this stuff. These timbers you see here are true 2 inches thick. They're probably 12 inches wide. Monster pieces of lumber. And this house is probably about 150 years old. And the knee-jerk reaction is usually like, well, hey, the wood's 150 years old. This wood is not 150 years old. Some of these trees were likely 150 years old when they were cut down 150 years ago in order to make this house. So that would put a lot of this wood at 200 to 300 years old. So now we're on the second floor here. You can see one of the coolest things about this house, I'm gonna be careful not to step through the floor, is this. Let me show you. Let me switch this around for you. If you can see up there, that is the roof of the house. When we bought this place, I poked my head through the attic and I got a flashlight out and I saw those things. This is called skip sheathing. Those are actual slabs of trees that were just laid down on top in order to make the roof. They're called skip sheathing because they skip. They're not solidly connected. What you're seeing, the black stuff in between, is actually shingles. That's the only thing separating the elements from the inside of this house. You can understand why these old houses leaked. The cool thing about this if you look up there, the cool thing about this is that some of those boards like that are 2 feet, 30 inches wide. What does that mean? That means that is an ancient tree that they cut down, most likely from the property, in order to build this house like that. That probably would not have been trucked in. That would have been a tree from the property. So I'm very interested in that stuff. So what we are going to do is we're going to get a lift and we're going to systematically take this down from the roof. The shingles will come off first, then all that beautiful skip sheathing will come down, we'll de-nail it, we'll stack it, we'll let it dry, and then we will use it for something else. Now, this is where we get into Nick's opinion a little bit. I believe that these should probably not be made into arts and crafts projects. There's not enough utility in those. So we're going to do what I've done with a lot of other stuff in my life, which is make furniture and things out of them for the next house. So you can see here, we have stacks of old lumber. This is stuff that I'm going to show you what we do with. This is probably old, I'm going to say fir, most likely, by the weight and the grain. There was an old house in town next to me that was actually framed with solid oak, and I'm going to show you what I did with it. So again, we're not wasting anything. Those are handmade bricks. Those will all be cleaned up and stacked. We got huge pieces of trim right here that will be saved. All the old doors from the 1800s will be saved. You can see the arched doorway here. Window original to the house, 2/2. Let's see if we got, yep, in this part of the house. All these windows here will be salvaged. Those are original 1880s windows to this house. Now, floors here, we're gonna try to salvage them, but my experience has been pine and fir floors will split a lot because they used old cut nails in them. So it's likely we're not gonna be able to salvage a lot of the flooring, but what we're really after is all the big stuff like that, all the dimensional lumber. So yeah. I thought I would share this. This is a special place for me and my family. And yeah, we want to honor this. We want to do right. When we take this thing down, it's likely that because of a setback, we'll have to move our next house a little back. But right outside of this house, between here and the first Slavic house, we will probably end up building a replica of a farmhouse, a 4-square. We have actual plans made up. We've got estimates for it, and we are just waiting to time all this stuff right. So it's very likely in the next 5 years you will see Slavic House 2 being built out here, and it is a long process. This property did not have proper electricity, running water, or anything. As a matter of fact, there's actually you see there's a little concrete thing right there. That is a cistern. A cistern is an underground water tank that's used to store water. And what happened is you had to go out to the windmill, turn the windmill on. The windmill pumped water up from a well underground, filled the cistern, and then, in the creepiest thing you've ever seen, in the basement down here, down there in the Blair Witch House, there's a water pump that you actually had to hook up. This house was running off of the same sort of water system that was done in the 1880s. There was not, out here, there is no sewer. There is no water line. There is no sewer line out to somewhere else. Everything here was taken care of on the site. So there is a tiny little septic tank for the sewage. There is the water cistern there that you had to energize with another pump in order to get water in here. And it's living old school out here. So part of the reason it took us so long, we've owned this property for 7 or 8 years. And part of the reason it took us so long to do this is because the infrastructure had to be done. We had to dig our own well to get our own water source. We had to put in our own septic system, our own little sewer system out here. We had to run power lines. We had to run internet lines. There was nothing out here. So we're basically building the equivalent of like a little city out here for one family. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of logistics. One of the worst things that you can do is go into the county and say, I want to do something on this piece of land, and your land has no record. It's better if your land has a bad record or if they know what's going on with it. The worst thing you can do is have this big blank spot on their map saying, hey, nobody's called us from that piece of land in many decades. So, what are you going to do out there? And now they have to inspect a lot and do that. And I want to do right by this land, by the county, and by my neighbors too, because we are kind of moving into the middle of some really established families out here. So just wanted to do right by them. Now, I'll take you back up to the new Slavic house and kind of show you what we do with all this stuff. All right, so this doesn't happen very often. 1880s house with original wood siding. Most of the houses from the 1880s that are still surviving in our area, just from me poking around on all these farms, are usually brick. And they survive because they're brick. To have an 1880s house with the original wood siding in good condition is marvelous, and I don't see it very often. I would paint this. This siding is in good enough condition to paint if the rest of the house was good. The problem is with this house, the reason we're not restoring it is The basement, the foundation, is a complete disaster. It's not been kept watertight, and we would basically have to jack this whole house up, build a basement underneath. The wiring, the plumbing was all out of code. We'd have to redo all that. Most of the plaster had been taken down and replaced with drywall in the past, so really there wasn't a lot of interior decoration and stuff left. So at the end of this, you'd have the outside of that house, you'd had regular walls, you'd have to do a lot of fancy plumbing and electrical work that may not be as efficient as it could be. So in the end, when you have something like that, sadly, you can take that thing down, build an exact replica of that thing. Looked exactly like it, but safe electrical, efficient plumbing, everything else up to code, more efficient, for about the same amount of money as it would be to restore that thing. So, the Restorationist Dilemma. How much do you love that house? It's not my family's house. My family did not grow up here. If this was my great-grandmother's house, you bet your ass I'd be there restoring it, but it's not that. I don't have the same sentimental value as I have in other things, so we have to take that into account. Restoring old homes is a sometimes emotionally painful pursuit. Restoring a business, growing a family can be the same thing, and I have to limit how much of that we have in our family, because also, like when I'm done with Ask a Painter today, we're going to go do something outside with the family, and I want to limit the amount of things that I have to do in order to preserve the time for things that I want to do. So I'll kind of show you what many of you guys have seen this, the war room. This is what I'm talking about. Respecting old surfaces, old things, and giving them a new life. This is all solid oak that was framing from a house in town in New Prague. They did a remodel project, and they had a pile of this. They had a pile of this stuff sitting on the road, and when I walked over and lifted it up, it was the heaviest wood I've ever felt. So I took it all, I denailed it, I cut it up, and I made this. This is my stand-up desk. So again, you're respecting, we can raise it a little bit, respecting history. This thing will be the desk for the rest of my life, but also combining it with modern stuff. Same thing with this, old quarter sawn oak. Back in a past life, I actually used to make furniture. When I had a family, that obviously slowed down, but I made this, all out of quarter sawn white oak, as a little cabinet for there. I made these picture frames out of salvage stuff to commemorate a trip to Canada I did with a friend of mine out in the wilderness. Table like this here, all salvaged again. So yeah, when I talk about the restoration lifestyle, when we talk about having this gene inside of you, it's something that I cannot stop. It's helpful in a lot of ways. I take something that was once nothing, a business that didn't exist, and grow it the best I can in order to provide good jobs for people that I care about, to take care of clients' homes. It's not just old stuff. Homes, split level 80s home that has to have wallpaper stripped, popcorn ceiling stripped and redone. I get the same sort of satisfaction on a different level than I do from restoring a lot of these old homes. It's in you. And when you have that, it's tough to shut it off. I'm very fortunate, and I didn't plan this. I'm not smart enough to plan this stuff, but I found a discipline and a life that scratches that restoration itch for me. The business to me is a restoration project. The people I interact with, the houses I do, is all that sort of restorative process of how can we take something that's fine, good, whatever, but maximize it for beauty and utility. And it's quite a journey, and it's not like just sharing a spreadsheet or something like that, but it all informs what we do. It's a driving force of everything here. You can start connecting dots. You know, why is it easy to wake up early every morning? Because this is satisfying. I'm very fortunate that I found something that I actually like to do. When I survey a lot of my peers and other adults around me, it turns out that people don't necessarily like what they do, which again, ignorant thinking would be, of course, you're going to spend more time doing this likely than you are with your family every week. So why wouldn't it be something that you love to do? And it turns out a lot of people don't like their jobs. This is something that I like dearly, and I'm very grateful that I get to do it every day. And I'm very grateful now that I get to do it with other people. So painting, there's not many questions left for me about coding science, how to do something, where to put it. I've been doing it for 30 years. I still run into things I've never encountered every day, but the principles are sound. Leadership is my new restorative project. It's something that I am very inexperienced in, relatively, and it's something that I'm learning. And it is my old house now. I'm restoring. I think of my leadership abilities as something that's there, it's functioning, but has a lot of room to grow. And so that's how I think about mainly all that stuff. So, all right, everybody, I won't prolong this. I do appreciate you guys kind of doing this with me. It's an important part of what we do. It's not all spreadsheets. It's not all numbers. It's not all ratios. It's not all gross profit. This is a business that's heavy with people, and we can't forget that. There is a driving force behind what we do. There's a passion behind what we do, and all of this is easier if you know thyself. Supposedly that's the key to a happy life, is knowing thyself. And if you do know yourself, you know what makes you happy, what makes you sad, and what gives you energy, and what robs your energy. And building a lifestyle around that seems to be a very good idea to do. So thank you guys. I do appreciate all this. Have a good weekend, and we will talk to you guys next week.